Chronic diseases by Hahnemann.
Nature of chronic diseases. The homeopathic healing art, as taught in my own writings and in those of my pupils, when faithfully followed, has hitherto shown its natural superiority over any allopathic treatment in a very decided and striking manner. And this is not only in those diseases which suddenly attack men, the acute diseases, but also in epidemic diseases and in sporadic fevers. Venereal diseases also have been radically healed by homeopathy much more surely, with less trouble and without any sequelae. For without disturbing or destroying the local manifestations, it heals the internal fundamental disease from within only through the best specific remedy. But the number of the other chronic diseases on this great earth has been immeasurably greater and remains so. Treatment by allopathic physicians hitherto merely served to increase the distress from this kind of disease. For this treatment consisted of a whole multitude of nauseous mixtures, compounded by the druggist from violently acting medicines in large doses, of whose separate true effects they were ignorant. Strong medicines mixtures ఇస్తే సపరేట్గా దేని తాలూకు డేంజరస్ ఎఫెక్ట్స్ సైడ్ ఎఫెక్ట్స్కి వాళ్ళకి తెలియదు, వాళ్ళకి తెలుసుకునే అంత ఇది లేదు, ఓపిక. అవి కలిపి వీళ్ళ ఏదో మెడిసిన్గా ఇచ్చేయడం. Together with the use of manifold baths, the pseudorific and salivating remedies, the pain-killing narcotics, the injections, fomentations, fumigations, the blistering plasters, the exudaries and fontanelles, but especially the everlasting laxatives, leeches, cuppings, and starving treatments, or whatever names may be given to all these medicinal torments, which continually varied like the fashions. Continually varied like fashions. By these means, the disease was either aggravated until the vital force, spite of so-called tonics used as intervals, was more and more diminished, or if any striking change was produced by them instead of the former sufferings, there appeared a worse state, nameless diseases caused by medicine, far worse and more incurable than the original natural one, while the physician consoled the patient with the words, "The former sickness I have been fortunate enough to remove. It is a great pity that a new disease has appeared, but I hope to be as successful in removing this latter as in the former." అని వాడిని కన్సోల్ చేస్తారు పేషెంట్. ఏం పర్లేదు, యువర్ ఓల్డ్ డిసీజ్ హ్యాస్ బీన్ క్యూర్, అన్ఫార్చునేట్లీ దిస్ న్యూ డిసీజ్ హ్యాస్ కమ్. As how the old disease was cured, I will cure this new disease also for you. So don't be sorry, don't worry. Definitely I will cure. Like that he consoles. And so, while the same disease assumed various forms, and while new diseases were being added by the use of improper, injurious medicines, the sufferings of the patient were continually aggravated until his pitiable lamentations were hushed forever with his dying breath, and the relatives were soothed with the comforting pretense. Everything imaginable has been used and applied in the case of the deceased. వాడు పోయాక వాళ్ళందరికీ చెప్తాడు, మ్యాక్సిమం నేను చేయాల్సిన అందుకే వెంటనే కళ్ళతోడు తీసాడు. It is not so. It is not so with homeopathy, the great gift of God. ఎంత కాన్ఫిడెంట్ అసలు. Even in these other kinds of chronic diseases, its disciples, by following the teachings presented in my former writings and my former oral lectures, accomplished far more than all the aforementioned methods of curing. That is, when they found the patient not too much run down and spoiled by the allopathic treatment, as was unfortunately too often the case when the patient had any money to spend. ఆ మనీ అంతా అయిపోయే వరకు అవన్నీ వాడుతూ అవి పూర్తిగా స్పాయిల్ అయిపోతుంది కదా. Using the more natural treatment, homeopathic physicians have frequently been able in a short time to remove the chronic disease which they had before them, and after examining it according to all the symptoms perceptible to the senses and the means of cure were the most suitable among the homeopathic remedies used in their smallest doses, which had been so far proved as to their true effects. And all this was done without robbing the patient of his fluids and strength. Robbing the patient fluids and strength, as is done by the allopathy of the common physicians, so that the patient fully healed could again enjoy gladsome days. These cures indeed have far excelled all that allopathists had ever, in rare cases, been able to effect by a lucky grab into their medicine chests. The complaints yielded for the most part to very small doses of that remedy, which had proved its ability to produce the same series of morbid symptoms in the healthy body. And if the disease was not altogether too invertible and had not been too much in too great a degree mismanaged by allopathy, it often yielded for a considerable time, so that mankind has good reason to deem itself fortunate even for that much help, and indeed it often proclaimed its thankfulness. A patient thus treated might and often did consider himself in pretty good health when he fairly judged of his present improved state and compared it with his far more painful condition before homeopathy had afforded him its help. Even some gross errors of diet, taking cold, the appearance of weather especially rough, wet and cold or stormy, or even the approach of autumn, if ever so mild, but more yet winter and a wintry spring, and then some violent exertion of the body or mind, but particularly some shock to the health caused by some severe external injury, or a very sad event that bowed down the soul, repeated fright, great grief, sorrow and continued vexation, often caused in a weakened body the reappearance of one or more of the ailments which seemed to have been already overcome, and this new condition was often aggravated by some quite new concomitants, which is not more threatening than the former ones, which had been removed homeopathically, were often just as troublesome and now more obstinate. This would be especially the case whenever the seemingly cured disease had for its foundation a sora which had been more fully developed. When such a relapse would take place, the homeopathic physician would give the remedy most fitting among the medicines then known, as if directed against a new disease, and this would again be attended by a pretty good success, which for the time would again bring the patient into a better state, In the former case, however, in which merely the troubles which seemed to have been removed were renewed, the remedy which had been serviceable the first time would prove less useful, and when repeated again it would help still less. Then perhaps, even under the operation of the homeopathic remedy which seemed best adopted, and even where the mode of living had been quite correct, new symptoms of disease would be added which could be removed only inadequately and imperfectly. Yea, these new symptoms were at times not at all improved, especially when some of the obstacles above mentioned hindered the recovery. First selection, the first remedy which we have selected, the first dose will act in a wonderful way. It will give very good relief. And after the second dose, it will give less relief. The third dose, very little. The fourth dose will not give any relief. Then naturally we go to the higher potency. There also, even after going to higher potency also, sometimes there will be no relief. So then we have to go to the miasmatic remedy. Some joyous occurrence or an external condition of circumstances improved by fortune, a pleasant journey, a favorable season or a dry uniform temperature might occasionally produce a remarkable pause of shorter or longer duration in a disease of the patient, during which the homeopath might consider him as fairly recovered, and the patient himself, if he good-naturedly overlooked some possible moderate ailments, might consider himself as healthy. Still, much a favorable pause would never be of long duration, and the return and repeated returns of the complaints in the end left even the best selected homeopathic remedies then known and given in the most appropriate doses, the less effects the oftener they were repeated. They served at last hardly even a weak palliatives. Even though the selected remedies, if we repeat frequently without observing the improvement which the patient is getting, definitely there will be complication and suppression will be there, or some complications will be there. In one case, who was improving very wonderfully with hypericum, that skin disease patient, which I have shown you. She was improving well. Her with hypericum itself, her blood sugar came to normal. Her BP came to normal. With hypericum.
The other way we mistake it only for injuries.
She was having horrible skin disease in the hands and in the feet. Only at first instance I gave only hypericum as an acute remedy to relieve these things. First I started the treatment with aurum metallicum. She got a good improvement. But afterwards the improvement was not so, it was very less. And even after giving aurum metallicum on him, there was no considerable relief. Her suffering was very much. Then I gave her hypericum to relieve the acute suffering. Cracks, pains, occasional. She got very good improvement with hypericum. After 2 weeks again I have repeated. Still the improvement continued. The second dose has worked for some 2.5 or 3 months. I need not repeat. But after there was a relapse of symptoms, mild symptoms. Then also the repetition might not have needed, but because there was the relapse of symptoms, I have repeated the dose. That dose has aggravated her. Hypericum. So then I did not give any medicine except the daily doses for sugar and these things. After 2 weeks, the aggravation has stopped and she got very good improvement again. There was no need to repeat hypericum at least for 4 months later. Her hands were completely normal, her legs were completely normal. Even after repeated blood tests, the blood sugar was normal. BP was normal with only hypericum.
cure a very deep chronic case with aconite cancer. Generally, this is mistaken for acute remedies. It is confined to only acute.
He has cured a chronic asthma case with hypericum.
Hypericum.
Master E.K., he has cured a chronic asthma of more than 15 to 18 years asthma case with only hypericum. Horrible, severe attacks were there. Very severe. He could not withstand. Though he used many medicines, he did not get much improvement. The remedies, the inhalers which were there, they did not relieve him later. He tried allopathy, homeopathy and Ayurveda, everything. No relief. He was suffering a lot. Then he came to Master. After noting down all the symptoms, then Master could understand how it started, the causation. He met with an accident some 18 years back. He had an injury to the ribs. The ribs has, there was a fracture of the ribs. They were pricked into the lungs tissue. Those ribs. After the recovery from this fracture, he started getting attacks. So basing upon this, Master has given him hypericum. He started with 200 and later he gave 1 m. He was completely cured. Basing upon the causation. For all these 18 years, no one could understand about the causation. In another asthma case, I have treated with Calimur. She was completely cured. She was also a chronic asthma case. Some more than 15 years she was suffering. She tried homeopathy, Ayurveda, allopathy, many methods. There was no relief. In our dispensary also, she was being treated for 2 years. There was no relief. Then I have taken the case as a fresh case and rewritten the case. And then I could understand because of the overuse of the hormone medicines for menses postponement. After that only she started getting asthma. Before that there was no asthma. There was no heredity of asthma. So only after horrible using of the menses postponement tablets, as after effect she started getting this asthma. Then I had administered Calimur for her. Wonderfully she was completely cured with Calimur. 200 4 or 5 doses, that's all. She was completely cured from asthma. But usually after repeated attempts to conquer the disease which appeared in a form, always somewhat changed residual complaints appeared, which the homeopathic medicine hitherto proved, though not few, they had to live uneradicated, yea, often undiminished. Thus, there ever followed varying complaints ever more troublesome, and as a time proceeded, more threatening, and this even while the mode of living was correct and with a punctual observance of directions. The chronic disease could, despite all efforts, but be little delayed in its progress by the homeopathic physician and grew worse from year to year. Even after good homeopathic treatment, the patient was worsening year by year. Sometimes it will be very surprising. In one case, previously also I have referred this case, but now also you can tell. One lady, she was very much devoted to Master. She was coming to Master. She was taking medicines in a very devotional way, and she was following the instructions of Master, and she was taking the medicines in a wonderful way. Even after 2 years of treatment given by Master, there was no change at all in her, though she was following in a devotional way. Then Master thought, why it is happening? We are observing the principles of Hahnemann. Why she is not getting improvement? Then he asked, what you are doing? Are you following the instructions which I am giving? She said, yes. I am not taking any onions or garlic or nothing. Now, whatever things you are telling, I am following strictly. Then there was some sixth sense. The master could understand where you are preserving the medicines. Then master asked. Then she said, my God, now in our house there are grandchildren. Wherever I put, they will take away, they will be eating the medicines because they are sweet. So, without observing, to divert their observation, I was putting these medicines in the kitchen, where the mustard and also jeera and also asafoetida is there. I am putting in that box. She told. All these 2 years, are you doing like this? She said, yes. I am putting them very carefully. So, by the side of asafoetida, she was storing the medicine all these years. Then master has explained, because of this only you are not getting improvement. Even though many times I have tried to study and restudy and give medicines, you are not getting improvement. I am very much surprised why you are not getting improvement when you are following very strictly the discipline. So he has instructed her not to put in that box. You take some plastic box, a new box, you put it in that box. You keep it somewhere very much long distance from the grandchildren and also from asafoetida. Then she got very good improvement within 2 months. Almost she was cured. జాగ్రత్తగా పోపుల పెట్లో పెట్టుకుంటాను ఆ మామగారు. పోపుల పెట్లో ఇంకో పక్కన పెట్టుకుంటున్నారు. మనవాళ్ళు కొంచెం తెలియకుండా. This was and remained the quicker or slower process in such treatments in all non-venereal severe chronic diseases, even when these were treated in exact accordance with the homeopathic art as hitherto known. Their beginning was promising, the continuation less favorable, the outcome hopeless. Nevertheless, this teaching was founded upon the steadfast pillar of truth and will evermore be so. The attestation of its excellence, yea, of its infallibility so far as this can be predicated of human affairs, it was laid before eyes of the world through facts. Homeopathy alone taught first of all how to heal the well-defined idiopathic diseases, the old smooth scarlet fever of Sydenham, the more recent purples, whooping cough, croup, psychosis, and autumnal dysenteries by means of specially aiding homeopathic remedies. Even acute pleurisy, the typhus contagious epidemics, must now allow themselves to be speedily turned into health by a few small doses of rightly selected homeopathic medicine. Whence then this less favorable, this unfavorable result of the continued treatment of the non-venereal chronic diseases even by homeopathy? What was the reason of the thousands of unsuccessful endeavors to heal the other diseases of a chronic nature so that lasting health might result? Might this be caused perhaps by the still too small number of homeopathical remedial means that have so far been proved to their pure action? The followers of homeopathy have hitherto thus consoled themselves. కొద్దిగానే కదా ఇప్పటిదాకా ప్రూవ్ అయినటువంటి రెమెడీస్ ఉన్నాయి, అని చెప్పి సరిగ్గా మనకి రిజల్ట్స్ రావటం లేదు. But this excuse or so-called consolation never satisfied the founder of homeopathy. Particularly because even the new editions of proved valuable remedies, increasing from year to year, have not advanced the healing of chronic non-venereal diseases by a single step. while acute diseases, unless these, as their commencement, threaten unavoidable death, are not only possibly removed by means of a correct application of homeopathic remedies, but with the assistance of a never resting preservative vital force in our organism and a speedy and complete cure. Why then cannot this vital force, efficiently effected through homeopathic medicine, produce any true and lasting recovery in these chronic maladies, even with the aid of the homeopathic remedies which best cover their present symptoms, while this same force which is created for the restoration of our organism is nevertheless so indefatigably and successfully active in completing the recovery even in severe acute diseases? What is there to prevent this? The answer to this question, which is so natural, inevitably led me to the discovery of the nature of these chronic diseases. To find out then the reason why all the medicines known to homeopathy failed to bring a real cure in the above mentioned diseases, and to gain an insight more nearly correct and if possible quite correct into the true nature of the thousands of chronic diseases which still remain uncured despite of incontestable truth of the homeopathic law of cure. This very serious task has occupied me since years 1816 and 1817 night and day, and behold, the giver of all good things permitted me within this space of time to gradually solve the sublime problem through unremitting thought, indefatigable inquiry, faithful observation, and the most accurate experiments made for the welfare of humanity.
The giver and Padma unbeatable.
Yes, I did not allow any of these unintermitted endeavors to become known either to the world or to my followers, not indeed because of the ingratitude so frequently shown to me prevented me, for I heed neither ingratitude nor persecutions on my troublous path of life, which yet has not been proved altogether joyless because of the great goal toward which I have striven. No, I left it unmentioned because it is improper, yea, hurtful to speak or write of these still immature.
Mankind is not fitted.
Not until the year 1827 did I communicate the essentials of the discovery of two of my pupils, who had been the greatest service to the art of homeopathy for their own benefit and that their patients, so that the whole discovery might not be lost to the world if perchance a higher call to eternity had called me away before the completion of the book. An event not so very improbable in my 73rd year. 73 ఏట కనుక్కున్నట్ట. అప్పుడు అసాధ్యం ఏం కాదు కదా, పైకి వెళ్ళిపోవడానికి టైము అంచేత అది కాకుండా ఉన్నాయి. తను గట్టిగా వర్క్ చేసిన ఇద్దరికీ ముందు చెప్పాట మొత్తం ఇలా వర్క్ చేస్తుంది అన్ని. అది కూడా ఎప్పుడు చెప్పాడు, కంక్లూడింగ్కి వచ్చాక చెప్పాడు ఆయన. It was a continually repeated fact that the non-venereal chronic diseases, after being time and again removed homeopathically by the remedies fully proved up to the present time, always returned in a more or less varied form and with new symptoms, or reappeared annually with an increase of complaints. This fact gave me the first clue that the homeopathic physician with such a chronic non-venereal case, in all cases of non-venereal chronic disease, has not only to combat the disease presented before his eyes and must not view and treat it as if it were a well-defined disease to be speedily and permanently destroyed and healed by ordinary homeopathic remedies. But he has always to encounter only some separate fragment or a more deep-seated original disease. The great extent of this disease is shown in the new symptoms appearing from time to time, so that the homeopathic physician must not hope to permanently heal the separate manifestations of this kind in the prescription hitherto entertained, that they are well-defined, separately existing diseases which can be healed permanently and completely. He therefore must first find out as far as possible the whole extent of the accidents and symptoms belonging to unknown primitive malady before he can hope to discover one or more medicines which may homeopathically cover the whole of the original disease by means of its peculiar symptoms. By this method, he may then be able to victoriously to heal and wipe out the malady in its whole extent, consequently also its separate members, that is, all the fragments of a disease appearing in so many various forms. But that the original malady sought for must also be a miasmatic, chronic nature, clearly appeared to me from this circumstance, and after it has once advanced and developed into a certain degree, it can never be removed by the strength of any robust constitution. It can never be overcome by the most wholesome diet or order of life, nor will it die out of itself. But that the original malady sought for must also be of a miasmatic, chronic nature clearly appeared to me from this circumstance. When once the chronic miasm has entered, or chronic disease has entered, even though the person follows an orderly life or anything, it cannot be cured unless it is tackled with the miasmatic remedies. But it is ever more aggravated from year to year through a transition into other and more serious symptoms. Not unfrequently phthisis passes over into insanity, dried up ulcers into dropsy or apoplexy, intermittent fevers into asthma, affections of the abdomen into pains in the joints or paralysis, pains in the limbs into hemorrhage, etc. And it was not difficult to discover that the latter diseases must also have their foundation in the original malady and can only be a part of a far greater whole. But it is ever more aggravated from year to year, though a transition into other and more serious symptoms, even till the end of man's life, like every other chronic miasmatic sickness. Example, the venereal bubo, which has not been healed from within by mercury, its specific remedy, but has passed over into venereal disease. This latter also never passes away of itself, but even with the most correct mode of life and with the most robust bodily constitution, increases every year and unfolds even more into new and worse symptoms, and this also to the end of the man's life. And then once we question, in some cases, did you have any bad effects or any bad habits? They will, in the encourage I had, but no diseases were there. Why I am getting these symptoms? I had come thus far in my investigations and observations with such non-venereal patients, when I discovered even in the beginning that the obstacle to cure of many cases which seemed delusively like specific, well-defined diseases and yet could not be cured in a homeopathic manner with the then proved remedies, seemed very often to lie in a former eruption of itch, which was not unfrequently confessed, and the beginning of all the subsequent sufferings usually dated from that time. So also with similar chronic patients who did not confess such an infection, or what was probably more frequent, who had from inattention not pursued it, or at least could not remember it. After a careful inquiry, it usually turned out that little traces of it, small pustules of itch, herpes, etc., had shown themselves with them from time to time, even if but rarely, as an indubitable sign of a former infection of this kind. These circumstances, in connection with the fact that innumerable observations of physicians, so also more lately, and not infrequently my own experience, had shown that an eruption of each suppressed by faulty practice, or one which had disappeared from the skin through other means, which evidently followed in persons otherwise healthy by the same or similar symptoms. These circumstances, I repeat, could leave no doubt in my mind as to the internal foe which I had to combat in my medical treatment of such cases. Gradually I discovered more effective means against this original malady that caused so many complaints. Again, this malady, which may be called by the general name of sora, that is against the internal itch disease with or without its attendant eruption on the skin. It then became manifest to me. Many people, they call sora as itch disease. Itch disease means animal also used, but not physical itch disease. He says mental itch. But when there is a scabies or any skin disease is there, you are getting sora. Some people say. It then became manifest to me through the aid of afforded when using these medicines in similar chronic diseases in which the patient was unable to show a like cause, that also these cases in which the patient remembered no infection of this kind were of necessity caused by a sora with which he had been infected, perhaps even in his cradle or in some other way that had escaped his memory. And this often received corroboration on a more careful inquiry with the parents or aged relatives. Sometimes they may be forgotten even by the patient. Not only patients, parents also. In one case, he was affected with rabies. By that time, he was 17 or 18 years. Exactly, the rabies symptoms were there. He was jumping like a dog. He was raving. He was crying. And he was not allowing anybody. Like that it was there. He was under the treatment of fits previously in our dispensary. But his fits were continuing, and there was no improvement even after many remedies. Suddenly he developed these symptoms. Then we inquired, was there any dog bite for him? Mother said, no, there was no dog bite. He was not bitten by the dog any time, she said. But when he got improvement from this attack, he said, I was bitten by a dog at my 6th year, horribly on my leg. He told his mother, in one place where we were staying, there was on such and such time there was big injury. There was a big injury due to the dog bite. then she could remember and say, oh, yes, it was done. She could not remember. So we have treated him, and fortunately, he was completely cured with rabies. With belladonna 10 and 50 m, stramonium 10 and 50 m. After being cured with from rabies, he stopped getting these fits also, for which he was under the treatment.